Thank you, Rick. 1 o'clock, and we'll call the meeting to order. Peter, if you would call the roll.
Sure. Rickard? Here. Epstein? Here. Smith?
Here.
Dornberg? Here. And O'Grady?
Here. And Eric, if you would do the announcements.
Yes, we'd like to welcome everyone to our special board meeting. The meeting's being live-fed over the internet at www.kmpud.com. And you can follow the appropriate link for the board meeting. If anyone would like to make a comment or ask a question from the webcast, they can email me at eChristison@kmpud.com.
That's it?
That's it.
Before I get unseated here, I have a little announcement of my own. So I just want to thank our General Manager, Eric, and the staff, and Rick, Kelly, Brandy, where's Jessica? There's Jessica, and Drew, who are here for every meeting. Thank you very much for your support this year. Also like to thank our volunteers, the committee volunteers, without whom we couldn't do our job very well. So I thank them, and last but not least, I thank the directors. I've had to work with a lot of boards of directors in my day, and I would welcome these directors on any of those boards. It would have been tremendous improvement over what I had to work with. So with that, I just thank everyone for your support, and Bertram, you'll do well here. Thank you. So with that, I'll turn the meeting over to our clerk, Jessica.
Okay, so the district board election was scheduled to be held on November 5th to fill 2 director seats that were up for election. Since there were only 2 candidates that filed a declaration of candidacy, no election was necessary, and the Alpine County Board of Supervisors appointed the 2 candidates to the 2 vacant seats. So Standish O'Grady was appointed to seat number 2 for his third 4-year term, and Bertrand Peru, forgive me if I'm slaughtering your last name, was appointed to director seat number 1 for his first term. And this also marks the end of President Smith's term. So at this time, President Smith will go ahead and step down. Director Peru will go ahead and take a seat on the board, and Vice President Rickard will go ahead and move over into the president's seat to chair the next few items.
And before you leave, Jeff, on behalf of staff, just say it's been a real pleasure. We've all enjoyed working with you. Staff holds you in very high regard and really appreciate all the help you've given me, especially getting my feet under me over the last 2.5 years, so very much appreciated.
Bertrand, welcome. Okay. We move on to then agenda item number 5, corrections to the agenda or consent calendar. Eric, I believe you've got a couple.
Yes, thank you. So due to some personnel issues, I would like to request a couple things. I'd like to request to move items 9L and 9M for Operations Manager Benson to after 9C and before 9D, just so she can get off the mountain. And then I would also ask, since Joe Azaretto, partner in Aces Waste, is here and it's snowing pretty good and he wants to probably get out of here as well, I'd like to move item 9H before 9D, but after Operation Manager Benson's items.
Thank you. Okay. So with those corrections to the agenda, any other corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? With that, I will ask for a motion to approve the corrected agenda and the consent calendar.
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have something they'd like to address that's not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to, that was the adoption of the consent calendar. Sorry, got those two mixed up. Anyways, done. So now we are going to item 9, items for board action.
Excuse me, Vice President Rickert. I believe we just adopted the agenda, or any corrections to it. We still need to adopt 7A through C, and because Director Peru was not here for 7A, that should probably be taken separately, or he should abstain from voting on that.
Okay, we'll move 7A off the consent calendar. So the adoption of the consent calendar is 7B, approve current consent for claims, and C is review receivables and shutoffs report. Is there a motion to adopt those two items?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now we go to 7A, which is approve the regular board meeting minutes of November 9th, 2019. And
I'll make a motion for approval.
second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approved. And the consent items are done now. Now we go to item 9, items for board action. The first order of business is board officer nominations and elections. And I'd like to include, I'm assuming including in that is the board committee assignments.
That is not a nominated. That is assigned by the president. So whoever is president can make those assignments if they're prepared after nominations and voting is complete and offices are done.
Okay, so I open up the floor to board officer nomination and elections. Does anybody have an idea that they would like to forward?
I'd like to suggest that you be president.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, thank you.
Fix your chair.
For the honor. No, that chair is broken over there. Okay, we'll vote on that one. All in favor of nominating
I'll tell you
me?
what, I'll make the formal motion.
Okay.
That you be president, board president.
Are you
I'll
formally
make the
second?
formal second.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go on to a vice president, treasurer, and secretary. There are nominations for that group. I would like to then nominate Bob to be vice president, Stanish to be treasurer, and Peter to be secretary, and Bertrand to be assistant secretary.
I support that.
Is there a second to that?
Yes.
Okay. So moved and seconded with that slate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's our slate for the next 2 years. So because I've been vice president and a couple of people asked me if I wanted to be nominated, I thought I might become president. So I actually came prepared with some committee ideas, but this is open for discussion. So I've always thought that our committees ideally would have, that each of the 5 of us would chair one committee, because we have 5 committees, and each of us would also serve on a second committee. That's the ideal. We've not always had that, but that's been my ideal. So as I've looked at people's experience, expressed interests, and so on, this is what I've come up with. And obviously open to other, this is my current recommendation for your approval, but obviously open to other suggestions should you have any. So for operations, Peter, I think, is the perfect person to continue to chair operations because of his experience and presence. And I would like to join Peter on operations as a second board member.
Thank you.
Planning, Bertrand, if you're comfortable chairing a committee this early in your tenure, I'd like you to chair the planning, although you can, but I'd like Peter to be on the planning as well, and the two of you can discuss that if you'd like, but however you two would want to work that out, if you feel like you need some support in the chairing of committee. Finance, Standish is treasurer, along with Bob. Now, the IT committee, we've decided that IT and would absorb communications, but I think it'd be appropriate, given where maybe our focus needs to be in the coming couple of years, that it be really the communications committee that absorbs IT. So it would really be a communications committee, and I would like Bob to chair that, and Bertrand, because of your expressed interest in communications, I'd like you to be the second board member on the communications committee. And then personnel, as is a tradition, I will chair the personnel, and I'd like Standish to join me on personnel. So that's the slate. Operations, Peter, Eric. Planning, Bertrand, Peter. Finance, Standish, Bob. Communications, Bob, Bertrand. And personnel, Eric and Standish. So I submit that to the board for your approval.
Technical question. GPS belong to which committee?
Well, it'd be the communications now, because it'll absorb IT.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah. Maybe we should call it the GPS committee.
No, just want to make sure I could be helpful there.
Yeah, okay. The data curation committee. All right, let's go. Okay, I will, looking for approval of that.
Sounds very sensible to me.
I agree.
I'm totally fine with it too.
Okay.
Okay, that's the lineup. Now, in January, we'll be appointing community members. I just wanted to let people know, I mean, the board know and others, who's on board, who may not be on board anymore, and where we have openings. And I think that it's really up to all 5 of us to recruit to fill out our committees. Obviously, I'm also would like to actively recruit. I think it's important that we get new people where we can, where there's interest. We have room for 20 community members. So for operations, we currently have people, the people who have said they'd like to continue are Carolyn Scott and Howard Hoffman. Gene Reuter has expressed interest in that committee. Frank has expressed interest in that committee, amongst others. And then a gentleman in East Meadows whom I've met several times. He's a very skilled and good guy. Christian Bastul has expressed interest, and he would be a new face on our committees. So if that's the case, then the operations would be full with 5 community members. Planning, Cheryl Stern, Nate Whaley, and have expressed interest in continuing. And Brian Bigley's term has not expired. So we have those 3, Cheryl, Nate, and Brian. John Schroeder, who's another, Howard, I just mentioned your name. That's why you came in? John Schroeder, who has handled the snow contract in East Meadows, has expressed interest in becoming more involved with the PUD, would welcome his presence, and he has said planning would be a committee he'd be interested in. So if that were approved in January, there'd be room for 1 more on planning if there is somebody. What we're aiming for is 3 to 5 members, community members. Finance, Mark Duvall, Jack Longinati, and Nancy Trevette have all expressed interest in continuing. I believe Mark Duvall expressed interest. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Paul Fotenhauers, who's the CFO for Vail, his term has not expired. I just don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to know how interested he is, because he attends some meetings, but not. I don't think he attends the majority of them, and we really need people to attend if they're on the committee. So maybe worth a conversation with Paul. I'm going to confirm, but it may be that Alan Sapp, who's been just a great Finance Committee member, has suggested he's stepping off, but we'll verify that. If that's the case, there's room for one more on Finance. Communications is where there's a lot of opportunity. A gentleman named Steve King, and I don't know Steve King, is he was on the IT committee.
He's a paid consultant to them.
He's a consultant, okay. Then he is not. Okay.
So we're starting with a blank slate.
So you're starting communications with a blank slate. I have one or two ideas which I can communicate to the two of you. And then personnel does not have any community members. We will occasionally have maybe an ad hoc committee that does, but personnel does not. Then for January, I'd also like to be sure that we understand a little bit more about who should represent KMPUD on the economic development group, which isn't really a committee, but I'd like to know who should represent us. And then, of course, there's a summer festival, and that's something that, Rick, do you attend to that, or Jess?
Yeah,
Putting together that group. It would be nice to start.
Talking about that in January.
Okay. Is that a good rundown? Okay.
I just would like to comment on communications and IT, if I can, for a minute.
Yes.
The IT committee, our main area was really security, and having that pretty well planned, it's really hard to recruit people because there isn't much of an agenda and it's fairly technical. And on the other hand, I feel like there's a lot we can do to improve communications, whether it's improving what we already have or creating new things. So I think that should be the focus, and I think that's more likely to attract community participation. So that was the reason why I wanted to suggest the title change to communications and IT. There'll be occasional IT issues. They come up, but the communications is more likely to be regular items that we'd want to work on.
And actually, I'd also like just to say, and I don't know if Cheryl Stern is online. She often is for these meetings if she's not here. Cheryl has, ever since we initiated the biennial survey, she's been much involved with that. She has been doing the summer festival as well as the chili cook-off. I don't know what her bandwidth is. I don't know what her intentions are with those things. I don't want to load something else onto her. But certainly, I would leave it to her if she wants to move from planning to communications to participate in that.
Well, I'll talk with her. There's also the little topic of the playground, too.
And the little topic of the playground, yes.
I'll talk with her and see what her interests are.
Okay. We now move on to...
Before you move on,
Yes.
could you put the current committee composition on box? The one that's there now is January of 2018.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, good. Okay, so now we move on to item 9B, Resolution 1906, honoring Director Smith. I've got a resolution here that I'd like to read. Just need to get to it. Jeff. This is a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District honoring Director Jeff Smith for years of service. Whereas Jeff Smith assumed office in December 2015 and served a 4-year term on the Board of Directors, most recently as president. And whereas Director Smith participated in and contributed significantly to the affairs of the district in a consistent and fair manner. And I just want to insert here that I'm aware, I'm sure everyone's aware, that Jeff had some surgeries and rehab time over these last 2 years, and yet he didn't miss a beat during all that time, which I think is fairly amazing. Whereas Director Smith served the Kirkwood community and district with great determination and dedication. Whereas during Director Smith's tenure as a board member for the district, he also served as chairman of the Personnel Committee, served on the Operations Committee. And whereas Director Smith showed great dedication and commitment to the district and the Kirkwood community previous to his tenure on the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District Board of Directors and was the primary author of the district's current committee structure. Remember that, Jeff? And that's worked well for the past 10 years and continues to work well. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District does hereby express deep appreciation to Jeff Smith for his many hours of public service to the people of Kirkwood, California. And I would love to entertain a motion to adopt this resolution, 1906.
I'll move to adopt that.
I'll second it.
Standish seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Jeff, thanks so much. Okay. Pardon me? So the item C was new Kirkwood Mountain Resort Manager. I believe his name is Matt Jones.
Correct.
If he arrives, perhaps we can introduce him, or he can introduce himself later.
I was looking forward to meeting him, but when Dale seems to be absent. Bye.
Who was that person? Some
It
trouble.
was very well spoken. Very spoken truly. So then I guess we'll move
Okay, so now we move to the items that have moved.
9L.
We'll go to 9L, Performance Reporting and Aquifer Levels.
Thank you for
Sound effects are important.
For November, we had some interesting results for performance reporting. Electric production was 723,000 kilowatt hours, all off of the grid. Our losses there were only 7%, so pretty normal for this time of year. Propane was very interesting, I thought. We had a usage in our tanks, so deliveries into our tanks, usage from our tanks of 1.3 million cubic feet, which actually was quite a bit less, 345,000 cubic feet, less than what we sold. And I do have some background on why that is. We were working very hard at the end of November to try to prepare for the propane valve project, and we ran our tanks very, very low. Our liquid levels at the end of November were the lowest that I've ever seen them in my time here at the district. And anytime you reduce the amount of liquid propane in a tank, it is compensated by the vapor. So what we were doing was just vaporizing liquid that had been in the tanks for a long time. That looks really weird. We have a negative 26% loss for the year. We've been getting delivery after delivery to recover our levels, so I expect that to come back down. But I just wanted to give you the background on why propane looks so weird.
26% loss for the month of the year.
Negative 20, so yes, 26% growth for the month, and that's a negative 6% for the year.
Yeah.
All right, the rest.
The explanation on why you have such a discrepancy between your readings and the actual numbers?
Like I was saying, we have in our tanks we have liquid and vapor. We measure to get our tank levels the liquid level using a dipstick, for lack of an easier way to describe that. Since we were drawing those liquid levels down so far, we were still putting propane into the system from our vapor space, but our liquid levels were very low. So I think that is why we often have negative losses in propane, but this is a very negative loss, and I think that's why.
Can I ask you a question? How much
cubic feet are in the tanks if they're completely full? What's the capacity compared to the usage?
That is so we
Approximately.
the tanks are in gallons, and so we have a 50,000 gallon capacity. Kelly, do you know off the top of your head the
Multiply by about
comparison?
36.
Yeah, it's 36.
Something.
Right. So 170,000 cubic feet.
More than that. It's a decimal off.
Yeah, a decimal of
Anyway, lots.
Yes, a lot.
But we only ever fill it to
We
about
can
80%.
only fill it to 80% liquid capacity because you have to have the vapor space. So it has continued to be a complicated thing to try to track our deliveries, purchases versus our sales. We do normally end up about 0%.
Frank, is there a background question?
I'm trying to get a sense of how much is in the tank versus what the variance is, so we can get a sense of.
What that variance represents in terms of capacity. So if the tanks were 0 or the tanks were full, does it represent the whole variance or some small percentage?
Wastewater were much more normal for us this month. 952,000 gallons produced from our wells in November. Our unidentified losses in water were 143,000 or 15%. Our goal is 15% for the year. We're running about 18%, so that one is pretty normal. And then wastewater, we had an influent meter number at our plant of 476,000 gallons coming into the plant. Unidentified unmetered use, so that's extra water getting into the system somehow. 75,000 gallons or 16%. So we're at 19% for the year on wastewater. And I have no other comments unless there are questions.
I don't have a question, but I would like to ask the operations committee, or maybe the planning, one or the other, see what you guys think. But it might be interesting to have some sort of a performance report on snow removal during the winter. And I was triggered because, I think we all saw an email that was somewhat critical. I think there were answers to that, but I know that for the survey, there's going to be metrics looked at, how the survey is evaluated and so on, customer. It's just an idea. I'm not sure that's a great idea, but I would like one of the committees, whether it's operations or planning, just to consider. Eric and Brandy, where do you think that might land? Which committee that would be most appropriate to? Operations. Just to see, have a conversation about it, just to see if we think that there's something sort of, in a way, measurable, just to sort of, we keep tabs on it month to month.
I've actually been thinking about that.
Oh, okay, good.
I was going to save it for snow removal, but I'll just mention it now. Because one of the things we talked about is really there's kind of 3 categories of snow activities. One is light, heavy, and emergency. If I can, I'll just use those 3 as names. Maybe they're not the best names. In emergency, our only goal is to make sure that vehicles can get in and out. In heavy, the amount of snow falling is beyond our capacity to keep up with it. And light or medium, then it's within our capacity to keep up. So one of the things I've been thinking about is for each storm event, from the start to the end, what category was it in, and it might be more than one, and what was our average results for that, and to track it by storm, because that's enough activity in it to be meaningful. We get 20, 30 storm events per year, and also we have an expectation that a certain amount of snow is within our capacity to keep up with. And is that really happening? If we fall behind, what's the reason for that? Is it equipment failure, staffing, or whatever? So that was kind of along the line that what I was thinking
I'd like
about.
to maybe suggest, if others agree, maybe it should go to the communication/IT, because it sounds like it might. Because the idea here is to do something that's not going to take a lot of staff time. I don't know how much time these performance reports take. You have the meter readings, you have readings, so I assume it goes fairly smoothly.
It does.
I would like whatever this is to be similar. Well,
Yeah, I was looking for something that could be automated except for the judgment over based on the expectations. Is it light, heavy, or emergency? And that's probably by shift. And there's multiple shifts within a storm event. So that's probably the
Well, I think this is
complication,
sort
but
of
we have help now to
more of
help
an
figure out complicated
IT,
things.
Communications thing, so I'd like to sign that
Anyway,
to
yeah,
that
if
committee.
you think that's a good direction, I'm happy to
Well,
try
why don't
to
we try
explore
it?
it.
We can talk about it. Why don't we try it?
Well, maybe both committee can think about it, and then we can have a discussion. Typically, with 1 inch per hour, I would expect the PUD to be able to keep up, and 3 inch per hour, I don't expect the PUD to be able to keep up. And then there is effectively, so that actually be it actually be useful for heading to make the decision to move in emergency mode or not. I think, I know it was the first term of the season, but I don't think the storm we had last time was justifying to be in emergency mode. And
I have a question about that, though.
yeah.
Would you say Sunday and Monday of Thanksgiving weekend were in which of those three categories?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not emergency?
mode. Yeah, absolutely
Well,
emergency.
at least one of the shifts
Yes.
was, from what I could tell.
Are you
But
saying it
part
was
of the idea is
Are you saying it was emergency or heavy? Yeah.
Emergency, I agree.
I agree.
Okay, so let's not
but
just...
the main point is this: have a way of thinking about it, and then see how some way to try to measure, because customer satisfaction is based on exceeding expectations, and if we don't set expectations properly, people are going to say, well, how come you didn't plow my driveway? And, well, we couldn't even get through the road, right? So that's kind of the thinking behind it.
Good. So I like Bertrand's suggestion. So
Seems like
one,
you could correlate it with road closures and inches per day.
Yeah, that's good.
so why don't we talk about
In
it?
terms of making those three.
Why don't we talk about it
10%?
generally at
Yeah,
operations
exactly,
and
yeah.
how it would be done? So it's
the
got to be
committee
done.
first.
It's got to be done easily by staff. I mean, whatever we
Yeah.
do, it's got to be done easily by
Yeah,
staff.
right.
Okay.
Okay. I
Good.
like the idea.
Good. Okay. We move on to item M, which is wildfire mitigation plan.
Before, we have discussed the need for the district to adopt a wildfire mitigation plan. This came before the board previously, and staff was directed to create a plan that meets all of the requirements in accordance to Senate Bill 1028. And so what you have before you is that next step. We are required to adopt, as the district, a wildfire mitigation plan by the end of this year, to be reviewed by an outside consultant, an independent consultant, and brought back before the board with that independent consultant's report by July of next year. So we are a part of the California Municipal Utilities Association. We worked through them to create this plan that is in your packet. And I'm not going to go through the whole plan. It is lengthy. But there are a couple of points I wanted to make on that. One is that the CPUC was responsible for creating this fire threat map that basically shows you where the highest fire risk areas are. We have very little equipment that is applicable in this thought process because most of our stuff is underground. But we have 1.7 miles of overhead from KM Green down to Bear River Reservoir that is overhead, and it's overhead in a Tier 2 area, which is elevated risk. So based on that, we worked through the process of creating a wildfire mitigation plan that meets the requirements of people who have things in these elevated risk areas. I think the biggest point that I can call your attention to in the plan itself is there's a section on automatic reclosers. That's something that PG&E has been in the news about. I think, Eric, you had brought an article to that effect. And it's something that is on an overhead line, and if there's a fault, these open up and the line is de-energized, there's a piece of equipment called an automatic recloser that recloses it back with no input from anybody. It just automatically tries to close it back, re-energize the line. We don't have any of those on our system. So that luckily doesn't apply to us. What our system is designed to do is our system's breakers, unless they open under some problem of their own, our system's breakers stay closed if PG&E opens. If PG&E does not close back within a 3-minute time period, our breakers open. Anytime our breakers open, we have to physically close them back. We either have to go down to KM Green, which is our practice, so that we can do a visual inspection of the line, make sure there aren't any dangers, or if we know it was a intermittent fault or a PG&E issue that has been resolved, we can close these back via computer. But a person has to make a closure command. And so I think that minimizes our risk in that particular area, which is one that the state in particular is concerned about at this point.
Brandy,
Mm-hmm.
like when a tree falls on a line, which has happened a couple of times,
Right.
how quickly does any energy flow through that line, even for a quick fraction of a second?
It is a very quick fraction of a second, yes. There is a very small amount of time when energy flows. It's the fault current that has to get back to one end of the other of the line to open a breaker, but it is a very small amount of time.
So,
Talking about milliseconds or
Yes,
milliseconds?
milliseconds, yes.
okay. So there is some risk that could spark something if something were too close, or is that not a very...
The initial incident that hits the line that causes the fault, there is a small amount of risk, yes, because that initial tree hitting the line and contacting has to send a fault signal back. So yes, there is a small amount, but it would be, our danger would be that initial hit and not the line re-energizing and then setting the tree on fire.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So, Brandy, I thought the report was really good. I had 3 questions on it. The first one is, so we have 2 overhead lines, right? The 110 and the 34K.
We no longer have the 110.
Oh, that's right. That's what I was...
Which simplified our lives.
Right, okay. So moving on, how soon they forget, really. It's amazing. What's the impact of the fact that that's a shared pole with PG&E on the portion of the line that we're discussing? And is their plan for maintenance that consistent with ours? That's sort of one question. How is it different, the fact that we're in the shared pole authority for that, although we're the top dog in terms of the height? And then the second question is, they had various distances for brush and other things away from the poles. But for me, the main question is there any tree at all, healthy or otherwise, that if it fell over could touch the pole, touch the wire, and that has to do with the corridor width. And so I don't know if there's any discussion of the corridor width. There was discussion about any tree that looked like it might be diseased or otherwise really dealt with. But the healthy trees, is the corridor wide enough so a healthy tree can't fall? Or is there any discussion on that should be done?
Okay.
Those are my
So
3 questions down to 2.
Good, 2. So the first of that is PG&E is definitely doing exactly the same thing.
Maybe not at the same level.
Exactly, because
Given
they
the
have
volume of things they have to do.
and their line is a lower voltage line,
Right.
so their clearances are narrower than our clearances.
Right.
But I can tell you, just being out recently and walking the hazard trees, PG&E is marking a lot of the same trees we are. So they are out in the same area doing the same thing. They have the same concerns about reclosing as we do. And so I think it's a mutually beneficial thing that we're on the same pole. We're both trying to, protect it the same.
And it seems reasonable that might be included in the report. I
Makes
guess that
sense.
would be my main. my main point.
And then your comment to the corridor is absolutely correct. It is by design and by requirement of the Forest Service not wide enough to protect it from any green tree that could fall on it. I believe it's a 30-foot corridor, and
30 foot
in
from the
either
center
side,
line and
from
either
the
way?
center line, yes.
Yeah, not the door.
exactly.
Right. Okay, yes.
So it's pretty. You go out there and you look at it. I mean, it's pretty narrow. There are a lot of very tall trees very close to the line. So that I think could also be mentioned in there that we're operating this way because of
limitations in the Forest Service and not our choice.
Exactly.
Not necessarily our choice.
I just want to be clear because you and Bob both said the same thing and then agreed that you said that. You said different things and both agreed you said the same thing. It's plus or minus 15 feet, 30 foot total width, not plus or minus 30 feet on center line.
Oh, I think it's bigger than 30 feet.
In some places, it's
We'll confirm, Eric, but I thought it was 30 on either
I thought.
side.
Okay. Well, it'd been.
We'll
I would
confirm.
like you to
I will
clarify
confirm,
what it is.
and I.
encroachment or the
Yeah, absolutely.
lease.
And so what I ask, if the board is agreeable today, is that we approve the plan since we need to do it by the end of the year. I will take the comments that we get here and incorporate them into the round that will come out. We'll incorporate those plus the independent auditor's comments into the next round that you would see on or before July of next year.
That makes sense.
And the Operations Committee reviewed this report and recommended approving.
I'd like to comment. My question was also related to the corridor. The situation has evolved since we actually went through this process of building this overhead line, whatever you said. Overhead, that's the right word. And sensitivity of fire and wildfire mitigation is much higher today, even within the forest organization. So could we approach them again to see if there is room to widening this corridor?
We could. We'd also have to do an entire new CEQA NEPA document, would be the other thing, and that's tens of thousands of dollars. But
Yeah, there'll be a cost associated to it, but if we go with fancy equipment, it'll be a cost as well. So I'd like to at least have a sense, explore that idea. Can we, and how much would cost to widen the corridor?
Yeah, even knowing whether it's something that could be considered or not, without trying to do a cost estimate.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, that's the first step, I think. Could it be considered?
We'll float it to Forest Service and see
Just
if
to
they're
find out what
willing
their
to
current
consider it or
attitudes
not.
are.
Yeah.
I think that'd be good to
Right.
know.
'Cause how big would the corridor have to be? What's the tallest trees around it? 130, 150?
They would have to be very big.
Maybe
I
go
mean,
from a
200
60-foot
feet.
corridor to a
Mhm.
400-foot corridor?
Yeah, it would. There are very big trees out there, so it would be a very big.
We'll ask that question
But yes.
initially. But based on our recent work with Forest Service, I think we know the answer, which is no.
And that will take us a long time to get to.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, we can certainly ask that
I
question.
just think, in terms of completeness of the report, establishing why the corridor is this width, how we mitigate the risk that it can't be wider, is primarily by inspecting the trees multiple times a year,
Yes.
and assuming that a healthy tree in a healthy forest has a low probability of
Stays healthy.
falling.
Yeah, it is.
Right? I mean, that's what we're banking on.
Well, we have identified 23 trees that we want to cut. The Forest Service has been making it difficult in an untimely manner for us to do it. And they approved us to cut 23 trees if we cut them before March of this year. Otherwise, we'll have to do a study all over again,
And we had to
which
retain-
includes GPSing, frogs, et cetera.
Something we haven't had to do since the original installation. We had to the district had to retain a biologist to be on site and write a report both before and during and after, which is going to cost additional thousands of dollars. What was it, 3,800, 4,800? Just to do that, to watch 23 trees be cut, so amplify that every time we cut a tree. That's what the Forest Service is making us do now.
Are we planning on removing those trees during the winter?
We were planning on removing those trees before Thanksgiving. We're going to see. We do have the biologist on standby. There is snow down in Bear.
We still have to have a meeting with the Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife January to try to get the okay to move forward. We have approval, but until we do these meetings, we don't actually have approval. So we're still working through it.
If we could get those 23 trees cut before March. If there's some way to do it, find a faller that'll go over the snow. And I'm sure there's probably one out there. It'll cost us a little bit more money, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Rather than delaying the process for another 6 months. It's frustrating.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the audience on the wildfire mitigation plan? From the board? This just requires a motion to approve.
To adopt the resolution
There's a
1907.
1907.
I move that we adopt Resolution 1907.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice job. Okay, we will now
Thanks, Randy.
move
Drive safe.
to item, where is it?
9H and 9I.
H. And I.
Page 69.
So item H is ACE's solid waste contract, Fifth Amendment. And you want to introduce?
Yes, so we do have Joe Azaretto, partner in Aces Waste. He came up for the meeting. That's Joe.
Welcome, Joe.
Welcome.
Partners in crime with Paul Sr. And so appreciate him coming up. So the first item, obviously, is the contract. All the history is contained in there. That took weeks to research, going back through old binders from 1995 forward. But after initial indications, ACES was willing to work with us and to come up with a Fifth Amendment. It is a 207% increase comparatively. We received a proposal from South Tahoe Refuse, which is a 323% increase. And staff recommends that we move forward with the Fifth Amendment.
You recommend we take the Fifth Amendment?
That was some trash. Whoa.
Okay, this meeting, I'm going to bring this meeting to order. Are there any questions from the board on this matter? From the audience? I have one question. Maybe I missed it. I looked a couple times, but I couldn't see it. That in the scope of work includes the large bin or the 4th of July?
That has always been a handshake agreement. That's never been in any of the amendments or contracts prior, but ACES has always been very generous to work with us on the summer festival and the e-waste, and they always have been willing to provide that service for us.
Thank you.
Another question. Assuming CAL FIRE is going to show up again next year, should we investigate the idea of having a green material bin at the end of sometime during the maybe Lobo Day?
I think that is definitely something that we briefly touched on it in finance, but use of summer festival funds, one, to fund the chipping program, which is coming out of G&A, which is not where it should be coming out, but it could also be used to fund. There's nothing that stops us from buying additional bins from ACES outside of this contract. We do it all the time. We just get an invoice for it, and we just pay it outside of the normal scope of the contract. It doesn't incur any additional cost on people's bills in terms of their base rate. So yes, we definitely could do that, along with considering how we're going to fund the chipping program next year. So we could include a couple bins as an alternative, because you do have green waste bins.
We do. We have the green waste program in the lower part of the county. So whatever you need, we've always worked with Rick and Eric and Michael beforehand. So whatever you guys need, as far as the summer festival and all that stuff, the e-waste, we take care of all that gratis. And that's like a handshake thing that we do. Yeah. I've serviced this account 30. I've been with this 30 years. We've owned it 25 or 26. So Kirkwood's near and dear to my heart because this is where my kids grew up skiing right here. So whatever you need, we always try to work with Rick and whoever we have to do with the sludge and the solid waste. So.
Thank you very much. So I'm looking for a short phrase. So when someone stops me on the ski lift and finds out I'm on the board and says, how come the solid waste costs have doubled? I could say, well, they could have tripled.
Start with
But-
lead with that.
But if I don't want to say that, what is the explanation of why it's doubled?
Yeah, the district hasn't had a rate increase since the Third Amendment, which goes back 14 years. So fuel, labor, nothing's gotten cheaper in the last 14 years. That's probably the short version.
I think the other thing is, I was just shocked, it's in the rate study, but I was sort of shocked at what ACE is experiencing with the cost of dealing with recycling.
Yeah,
I mean, it's gone from...
I can touch on that. If you-
I would love it.
So in 2008, when the recession hit 2007, I've been I'm third generation, so I really understand this. The Olympics was in 2007, 2008. As an industry, we saw the recycling take a hit. We figured China was slowing down on the recycling. They weren't buying it because of the Olympics, because they were trying to clean the environment. It was actually the beginning of the recession. We saw it first and didn't realize what it was. That's how it all. So then now in the last, so it came back where we were getting $31 a ton. So we would deliver our recycling to a facility on Elk Road. It would pay us $31 a ton. China came out and India came out 2 years ago, so we do not want any more recycling. Basically, they want it if it's clean, meaning clean. I mean, it's an impossibility. Our cost went from us getting $31 a ton to yesterday paying $144 a ton to get rid of it. So we flipped
And this is unseparated recycling.
This is totally unseparated to take it to a facility. So we flipped $172 a ton is where we flipped. Cardboard, and again, yesterday, cardboard, we sell cardboard. We don't sell it, we give it away for free, not to pay the $140 on the other side of it. So that's pretty much, nobody wants it. Vietnam took a little bit. So we're taking a big hit. Green waste. Problem with green waste that we have on the other side is it doesn't compose. Pine needles, fir needles don't compose. They don't decompose. So now people don't want that. So we have markets. We're trying to say that you're bringing it. We're going to start bringing it to a place in Sacramento that will burn it as hog fuel and make electricity out of it, basically. Or wood goes to a hog fuel place. That's what they call it. They burn and make electricity. So yeah. So recycling's tough for us. Fuel, everything is just tough. AB 1383. They don't want food waste in the garbage. Yeah, but so we found out like a month ago that Cal Waste is kind of, if you're above 6,000 feet, you don't have to get into that program, the 1383. That's what's proposed because of the animals, because of the bears, basically. Tahoe, you guys, so you won't have to participate. So if you had to participate in that, you'd have to separate your food waste. Houses have to separate their food waste. So, and then you have the bear problem and all that. So luckily, you guys will be exempt, hopefully exempt from that. And the green waste thing, we're going to, that's another thing that we're going to do.
Right.
So, yeah. So our costs just keep creeping up.
Should we have been specific for food waste actually?
We're waiting for it in the lower, I call it the lower part of the county, which is below here. We have to set up a program for every city, every county, every resident, everything, to where the food waste, and the problem is that there's no digesters to bring it. So they pass these laws, so then we have all this food waste. So that's what they're trying to figure out now is digesters.
Well,
Whoever has a digester. Well, my grandparents were. It's funny because my grandparents were in the hog business, and years ago they used to feed the food to the hogs. Well, they don't do that anymore. I said we're reverting back to where I basically started. We're going back. But yeah, so the companies that have the digesters, they're overtaking their own facilities now, and they don't even have these. So yeah, it's going to be a problem, but it's a constant amoeba, I call it. Just everything just kind of does its own thing. So that's the reason for everything going up. The recycling is just it's incredible.
Right.
management expenses.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my recommendation is that some explanation be put in the newsletter, and I think the huge change in recycling costs is a material part. There's some increase in labor, but it didn't go up 200% in one contract period. Right? Either we were subsidizing from some other account, or you were taking a hit on it, or so I'd like to see some sort of explanation.
Fortunately, the proposed rate is 50%. I mean, it's big, but it's just even though the cost of the district is doubling, right? I think the rate increase is look at the study, is 50%.
Right. That's correct.
Right.
But we're on 9H. I don't want to.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but you're right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Right.
The rate's not doubling.
Right, because we have other costs in there.
There's other costs.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. What do we have to do here now?
I would like to follow up on that more broadly after we cover the finance stuff.
Okay.
Because we've had an objective of reducing rates at some point.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things on today's agenda that are rate increases.
Right.
So we're not really getting where we set out to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a solution. I just want to point it out.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just trying to see if is there a resolution here, or is this
There's no resolution. It just would be a motion from the board to direct me to execute the Fifth Amendment with ACES Waste.
Do I have a motion to that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
There we go.
Now, this is for a period of 1 year, is that correct?
This is through December.
5 years.
It's a 5-year term. It's a 5-year contract.
It's a 5-year contract, but there is a commitment on our part that goes with that you'll get
Correct.
into in the next.
Correct.
Right? The mandatory.
That we'll explore that. Yeah.
versus-
So we have other options.
There is no other.
We have an additional
I'm
obligation.
not talking about today, but I'm talking about a year from now, if we come up with a different plan that incorporates everybody in the valley, or we change.
This 5-year contract would just roll in no matter what happens with the mandatory or not. So we'd be locked in at this rate, whether mandatory rolled in or not.
But this doesn't control. This doesn't control how we assess our customers in particular.
The contract, no, it does not.
Okay.
No, that's a different. That's a 218
Because I
process.
see the need for change in how we're billing people, potentially. Okay.
Yes, this has nothing. Yeah,
All right.
I know what you're
I'm just
talking
getting
about, and I
clar-
agree
just
with
want
that. Yeah.
clarification here,
You're
so I know what
correct.
I'm
You're
voting on.
you're correct, Peter. You're absolutely right.
Okay, so this is simply the contract. This is not the rate that we're
Correct.
charging customers. This is the contract with ACES.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of this Fifth Amendment?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you.
for that.
Any other?
No, thank you very much for coming.
No,
today.
thanks for coming up, Joe. We really appreciate it.
Like I say, just from the business, my business partners, this has been one of our. It's out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a great place. We love it, and it's just part of us. And we looked at Kirkwood. We looked at Kirkwood as like a city at one time, and then Vail came and then everything changed. But that's how when we originally these rates was in the entirety of Kirkwood is what we looked at. So that's why we have a rate to go around. Because last winter we got held up so bad because the pass was closed and everything was closed. That's why we came around to do everything we can, and I know Rick was appreciative, Derek was appreciative of it. We do everything we can, everything we can do to serve you guys.
Did you keep track of how many times you have to go around?
Last year, I think we ran around 6
times.
6 times, and so I'm going to get with Rick, and I haven't just talked to him about this, because this is my account. Each partner has his own thing, and this is my account. So I'll get with Rick and Derek, and we'll email, say, okay, what do you want us to do? So we just don't arbitrarily come, same thing with the sludge. We don't arbitrarily come around and put the sludge up and do that. So, because it's a long ways for us to go. We have a 50,
Done it.
up and over. Yeah, I do it. I live in the Tahoe Basin, and I have to go to work that way sometimes. Go around and go to work that way. So I'll get with Rick and get with Derek, and that'll all be done. I think 6 times last year where the spur was closed, but we had also had times
Both.
when both sides, and you guys were stuck, basically. So Rick and I work great, and Derek and I work great. It works. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you as well.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to the study.
Well, let's see, should I, no, did we move, yeah, we moved I as well, okay. So this is now item I, solid waste rate adjustments. This is a presentation, possible action on the draft solid waste rate study 2019. It would be starting on page 82.
Okay, thanks.
So the ordinance, regulation, and notice of public hearing to be used in the adjustment of solid waste rates effective February 1st, although I think the study says March 1st, so I was going to...
It does say February 1st, but then I talked with Dick Shanahan, and he recommended March 1st, so that's why it changed in the study. So Shanahan has reviewed all this. All the 218 came from him. He said it was possible to do February 1st based on how we would be billing, but he recommended March 1st to eliminate any ambiguity.
Okay, great. So, Europe?
Okay, so just go dive into the rate study, and you can see the timeline there, and that does reflect the March 1st, 2020. The new rates would take effect. So, in essence, and as Eric pointed out rightly, ACES only makes up a portion of our total costs. We have adjusted for the new costs in this rate study, but we also attempted to eliminate the deficit that solid waste has been running at for the last 4 years, and which has varied between $6,000 and $25,000. So we tried to take that into account as well. Based on that, staff is recommending the rates be increased by $9.16 per month, and from our proposed base rate from $18.31 to $27.47 per month base rate to take effect March 1st. There are other things we can do. So I want to separate two items that have been discussed at both finance and operations. There's two issues here. One, there is the mandatory aspect of things that we've committed to ACES to look at next year. We got this contract based on a handshake agreement that the board consensus at our last meeting was. We agreed that was something we would explore. Not that we would do it, but we would explore it, with the caveat of looking at Vail's end date to try and coincide the implementation of it. So that was one thing. The second thing is looking at the methodology of how we assess. Right now it's a base rate, and it's just even across the board. A single-family residence gets the same base rate as a condominium unit. It's the base rate per. If you're a customer, that's what you get charged. There's no distinction. What Peter, I believe, was alluding to, and what staff has identified, is there is a higher labor component in some of the condominium units for the district to provide service, because it involves a vehicle and 2 people plus time. It takes about roughly 2 days to hit all the condominium units, assuming that the dumpsters are in good shape and people aren't throwing things down that they have been known to do in the lodge, for example, with the trash chute. To pull them out, hook them up to our vehicle, tow them out, get it in a position where ACES can take it, take the new one back, tow it back in, redo it. And it takes quite a bit of staff time versus just maintaining the transfer station. So that is something, as we go forward in the next rate study, assuming we go with the mandatory, that is something that we would recommend exploring as an option of, do we need to set 2 different rate structures? One where it's labor intensive, one where we just maintain the transfer station. And staff's recommendations, we should explore that in the rate study. However, because solid waste is upside down, and as you heard, $6,000 to $25,000 per year upside down, we wanted to suggest that the board adopt these rate increases to simply right the ship, and then we can explore those options as we go down the mandatory path of changing our methodology between those two. And right now, one other aspect is we don't accept solid waste from restaurants. 7800 Club. Sorry, what are they called these days? Is that their new name? 7800 Club. I keep seeing Battered Beaver when I look at the old contracts. They contract directly with ACES for that service, not through us. That's something we could also explore. Do we want to just add that in since we're now looking at a mandatory ordinance? So I'd recommend we separate these two issues and just try and get the ship righted for now, get these rates out to our customers for 218 process and possible adoption by March 1st so that we don't lose significantly more money than we're already losing.
Thank you.
That would imply there could be 2 rate increases in the same year.
No, I would anticipate that the mandatory process is going to take some time and some discussion and some community communication. And if we don't know when Vail's contract ends, we've asked and we've not received a response.
I thought we knew.
We do not know officially.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've gotten 2 different stories, which means I don't know.
All right. I heard one of them. So.
Yes, you did.
I just
Yeah.
want to mention that the 7800 Club is the one customer that actually does have a multiplier on their solid waste. So they pay more than just the standard base rate for their dumpster.
So we look forward to that discussion later.
Yes.
Later in
So
the
they
year.
go through us.
Yep, they go through us, but we definitely bill them more than just the regular base rate. They have a multiplier on theirs. Of, I believe, 12.1 is the multiplier on that.
Is that because of the nature of their waste?
It was because of the amount of dumps that they were having through the winter season. They filled the dumpster up quite a bit. So.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions about the study that would lead to an increase
I'd like to make a
in
comment.
the base rate?
On page 88, you have basically 2 options, like 50% increase, 187% increase, and both are said to be proposed base rate with ACES.
Yes, that's a mistake. That should say STR.
So
And that
it's
would be-
STR for the lower one.
Correct.
So my recommendation would be that since we have this multiple 100-page to go through, and I know when you have a staff report, someone else maybe can read it to make sure, because I was lost for a little while to try to understand what was going on here, and it's a typo. I agree. I mean, but it is throwing a monkey in the wheel. I don't know who says that, but basically, it is disruptive. So I don't know if you can.
I can fix that in 2
No,
seconds
I mean,
before we send
certainly
it out.
it's
Yeah.
fixable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For sure.
Okay, yeah, I actually had the same thing highlighted. Any other questions regarding the study or comments? Standish, is this where you wanted to discuss?
No,
Oh,
I'll cover it later.
Okay, so,
2 more questions on waste. I don't know if I have the right time here because they're talking about rate, but I don't know if we close the subject. The first one is just technical. Can we put cold ashes in any bin, or should we always put all the ashes, hot or cold, in the hot?
Put all the ashes in the hot ashes bin. Always.
So that I was starting to wondering because you're always referring to hot ashes. So I wanted to make sure I was still doing the right thing by
You're
putting
doing the
that
right
there.
thing. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah. The second thing is, does that critter came out by itself, or did he had to get out?
I made a nice hat out of him.
Huh?
I made a nice hat out of him. Like Daniel Boone.
Derek's raccoon. Whenever there's raccoons, he sticks a ladder in for them, and then they climb out.
He can climb that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute. It's really cute to watch him climb
Yeah,
the
yeah,
ladder.
yeah. That's it. Thank
okay,
you.
thanks. Anything else from the audience? Anything on this one? Okay, so I'm just looking from the agenda. What do you need? The action we would take is approve the draft solid rate study and direct you to draft the appropriate ordinance, regulation, and notice of public hearing.
What we would need is the board to approve the solid waste rate study with the correction, as noted by Bertrand,
Yeah.
the enabling ordinance, and the notice of public hearing.
Okay.
And then we would send out all of those things on Monday, which puts us under the 45-day. Puts us 46 days when we have to do a minimum of 45, so we get an extra day in there. And Jess is ready to go. She's ready to hit the ground running.
So do I have a motion to that effect?
Yes, I'll make that a motion.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I can second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Special thank you to Eric for negotiating this. We thought we might be high and dry.
Or at 323%.
Or with a high 320%. And it was only through Eric's efforts, special efforts, that we were able to gain what we gained. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I had the same thought independently, which is it was a really good recovery because we only found out about this in October.
Yes. I was sweating a lot.
Okay, I think we can now go to our regular order of agenda items. And Kelly, Finances D.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we will start with our October financials with the balance sheet on page 37 of your packet. The only note I had on the balance sheet for October was the variance in operating cash was basically just due to the timing of the completion of projects. That will definitely come more into line once we've cut the checks for the roof and T1 line things that have come through. So, but other than that, I didn't have any notes on the balance sheet, unless there are any questions. Okay. Moving on to the revenue account by fund. You'll notice that G&A and employee housing are both running at a negative. G&A always runs at a negative until the end of the year when we finally get all of our property tax revenues in. And employee housing, we are expecting it to be running at a negative due to the purchase of the two employee housing condo units that we purchased. So that was expected. You can see that snow removal has come into a positive, very small positive, but again, as we receive contract payments, that will go up. Any questions on the revenue account by fund? Moving on. We're the consolidated or combined income statement on page 40. Year-to-date operating revenues are up from plan by $202,000. That does include the $65,000 grant that we received for the SCBAs. So that should be taken into account, that $65,000 of that is from that grant that we received. Year-to-date, total operating is up from plan by $447,000. And again, a lot of that just has to do with the timing of projects and things like that. So, and then you'll also notice the variance in investment income, and this is due to the LAIF interest that we've received. And I didn't budget for the LAIF interest because it was something that we decided to do after the budget had been adopted. But next year, obviously, I'll budget for that because it's been a really good performer, and I can't see why we would stop using it. Moving on to G&A on page 41, you'll notice the variance in contract services. And again, this was just due to the timing of the receipt of our final Moss Adams invoice. You can see if you look out year to date there, the variance is more in line with just an overage of $2,200. Moving on to water on page 44. You'll notice a variance there in operations and maintenance, and this is due to the timing of the completion of the rate study that is currently
happening. We have to guess when we think these things are going to be completed, so it's just a timing thing from when we originally drafted the budget. Operating revenues year-to-date from water are just slightly under plan by $1,600, and year-to-date total operating for water is up from plan by $55,000, but again, still operating at a loss of $35,000. Moving on to water on wastewater, on page 45. Year-to-date revenues are up from plan by $16,000. Again, we see that variance in operations and maintenance for the same reason, for the completion of the rate study. And year-to-date total operating is up from plan by $118,000, but again, operating at a loss of $60,000. Moving on to electric on page 47. Year-to-date operating revenues are up from plan by $83,000. And year-to-date total operating for electric is up from plan by $157,000. You'll see when we get to November, we did have some a variance in budget the other way for revenues because of November's warm weather. Moving on to propane on page 50. Operating revenues are up from plan year-to-date by $14,000, and year-to-date total operating is up from plan by $44,000. And that is all I have on income statements, unless there are any questions. Moving right along.
Great, thank you.
You'll notice that you don't have a slide on this or a page on this in your packet, but October EBITDA, we were up from plan by $57,000, and year-to-date we're up from plan by $444,000. So, good start to the year. Okay. Moving on to November preliminaries. The revenues are actuals, and you'll notice that there was, we came in $80,000 under plan, but like I said at the Finance Committee meeting, I had my windows open until it snowed. That it was so warm through the month of November that you can really see that effect in.
Do you have a sense of how much of that is the propane and how much is electric?
Not off the top of my head, but I can definitely get you those numbers.
Because if it's propane, it also means our cost went down. If it's electric, our fixed cost didn't go down.
Right.
So if it's propane, it's not such a big deal. If it's electric, it's a bigger deal.
I can say that the propane rates were still doing their normal jaunt up in the month of November, even though it was so warm. But people not using propane obviously were, were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, normally we'd expect some snowmaking in November,
Mm-hmm.
and so at least 40,000 is the loss in electricity for
Mm-hmm.
snowmaking.
Yeah. Right.
But I can definitely get you those specifics for.
Well, we'll see it next
Okay.
month, so that's okay.
Any other questions on November revenues? Okay, moving on to cash flow. November ended with $2.5 million in total operating cash, which is significantly higher than what we had budgeted for. But again, it's directly related to the timing and the completion of projects. We did receive our invoice from Centimark for the roof at the wastewater treatment plant. We have not paid that yet because there are still stuff that they need to complete before we'll pay that out. So I said it was, I thought we were going to be paying it in December. We may not, depending on what they get done and what they don't.
Correct.
And so our low point, now that I have finished pulling out this cash flow to
fiscal year 2024. Our new low point is now December of 23 is our new low point. It had been December 20 for a very long time, but we have a new winner in the low point.
So, Kelly, given that it's several years out, how much of a concern is that to you?
It's not at this point. You know, we always will have a low point, you know, where we push the cash flow out so far, but we would budget to correct that, you know, in the current budget. So knowing that, seeing that, we would work to make sure that that didn't happen. Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is because it is a factor in my thinking about this Rust rollover that we're going to be considering.
And this does not. This is showing that we're rolling over everything. This. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And what if we don't roll it over? Then that thing would be.
Exactly.
Well, so I'm just saying that feeds into a decision that we're making today.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a useful tool for us to see, you know, how we need to really tighten the bootstraps, for lack of a better expression, in the following years.
Yeah.
And there are transfers back into, out of operating cash back into reserves for electric that go along, and those things can be deferred as well. There's a $700,000 transfer the January before, so 11 months before. So could that be deferred if it looks like that forecast is going to be accurate? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the number I worry about is the December 20 number, because I don't remember ever having it. I know December is always our lowest month by far, but I don't remember it being that low. Meaning we always strive to keep $2 million in the bank at the low point, and that's not even close.
So
and again, we do have a $500,000 transfer scheduled for next month that we again could defer if we wanted to.
Or we could transfer it back if we need it.
Right.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely.
So, for example, 1590 is our lowest
The
month.
thing that we should also keep in mind is we may not want to transfer money into the reserve. We make more in the LAIF, so you know, maybe not transferring that money to the reserve, maybe keeping it in the LAIF rather than in the reserve will make more interest.
So the reserve is not just an accounting entry?
No, it's an actual
account.
It's an actual bank account.
In Bank of the West?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And we
don't touch it
Yeah.
normally. PG&E is the reason we touched it.
Right. I really
Yeah, it doesn't, and it doesn't actually earn. It's not an interest-bearing account. That account plays into what we have to pay for bank fees. So that balance is used to offset bank fees. It's not actually an interest-bearing account in that sense of the, you know.
Yeah, it might be something for us to think about in finance because, yeah.
Any other questions on cash flow? Okay. Hearing none. Known budget variances. The only change was to update snow removal salaries and benefits through October this year. So that was the only change. No other new things added.
Well, thank you. Kelly,
Yeah.
are there any other questions of Kelly at this point?
I would probably not move it out of LAIF to Bank of the West. It's 2.34% per for the last quarter.
I mean, for how that's performing, it just seems silly to do that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to 9E, the Russ loan rollover. Kelly, you're still up.
Sure. So I provided the maturity date schedule for all of our loans. At the Finance Committee meeting, it was discussed that, you know, we should take a look at not just rolling over to, we had previously been picking 10 years out, 7 years out. But we've rolled over 2 loans to December of 2025 was the maturity date we picked. We can, with the A8 and B8 loans, pick a maturity date all the way through 2047 as we see fit. I've included the Treasury rates as of December 6th of 2019, and based on previous loans that are coming to mature, I went out 15 years to 2035 for a suggested maturity date for this loan. There isn't a 15-year rate on here, but we can pick whatever maturity date we want through December of 2047, and I thought 15 years based on the previous rollovers was...
Because there's a big gap in principal due, or between 2035 and 2046, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Most of our A8 loans mature in 2047.
Okay.
Right.
Thoughts from the board? Standish, do you want to summarize our finance committee discussion?
Well, I think Kelly did, but basically they recommended 7 years, and we encouraged them to look at 10.
And now you're recommending 15.
Yes.
Based on actually pulling out all of the maturity dates.
So, in this 5-year cash flow forecast, are you assuming that we roll over the other A8 loans that are due?
Yes.
All of them?
Yes, that was. It's not. It's definitely not in there as a to pay out the maturity on those loans. It's all rolled over.
So really, in a sense, given what's ahead of us with the capital improvements we got to make and the replacements, equipment, all the stuff we have to consider, would you say that the first repayment that we're likely to make that's shown here is a 2028?
Well, that's the first.
Oh, I guess there are some
balloon.
other ones here on this next page.
Right. So if you look at the total for
Yeah.
those years, you can see some of those maturity amounts are
Yeah.
pretty large.
2025,
Mhm.
over $2 million.
Right. And that was, mainly due to the fact that the last two loans we rolled over to 2025, but we can roll those over again if we choose to. It's just, I hadn't thought about putting them, all in a spreadsheet like this, and when I did that, it was quite eye-opening.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's ironic because I'm just thinking back 10 years or 8 years or whenever, when we were first discussing these loans, and I remember Dave Likens saying, you just roll them over. You never pay them off. You just roll them over. And I remember sitting here saying, oh, sure. And yet here we are doing that.
The main reason we're doing it was because of the change in the PG&E structure, and we needed cash. Otherwise, paying them off allows us to lower rates.
Right.
And our rates are 5% higher than our costs, so we can accumulate cash so we can pay them off. So I have every intention of wanting to see them paid off.
I mean,
obviously, on a schedule that's predictable.
And we were able to, we had $3 million in the bank before the PG&E.
Right, we could deal with a $5 million one-time cost.
So
because of this,
we can definitely do it again.
Right.
We can definitely build those cash reserves to be able to pay these off and not have to roll over every single one.
Right.
So the recommendation on the rest, so you're looking for direction, a motion and direction on this.
Yes,
so
please.
the recommendation is to roll the current loan that's due about 15 years to 2035 at an interest rate that would probably be in the order of
2-ish.
2%.
Yeah.
1.9.
Okay.
1.8, 2.02.
Are there any comments from the audience on this one?
By the way, I think your recommendation 15 years makes sense, just looking at this spreadsheet.
Okay. Do I have a motion to take?
So moved.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Stay up here for this.
I'm also concerned that we won't follow for perpetuity.
On the other hand, it is very inexpensive money right now.
It is.
I mean, there is that plus. At least we're not
Okay.
rolling over 70.
Well, and what's our earnings rate on money?
2.35% for the last quarter.
So, I mean, we're currently, the spread is in our favor
Right.
at the moment.
Okay. Okay, we will now move on to another one. Census meter software upgrade. Is it discussion and possible action on software upgrade for our meters?
So I'm going to stay up here for this one, too.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. So I don't know if you want to take it or...
The short version is, and the staff report is quite complete, and you did a very good job explaining it, is the software when we purchased it was originally, the hardware when we originally purchased the system upgrade was already outdated at the time. It's now no longer going to be supported. We could take a gamble to not do this for a certain amount of time, betting on the come that the equipment's, then the servers are going to continue to operate functionally. If they did fail, it would go to basically engender remote, actual physical reading of all meters, which would be extraordinary high use of staff time, which would exceed the gains we would get. And so now they have a new piece of software they'd like us to upgrade to, which is brand new from 2014, and it's being supported. So if every 7 years is their marker, we might maybe want to wait till 2021. But the cost is, there's an initial cost of, staff recommendation is not to purchase the customer portal portion of it because we already have that through Report Server, which was built by Bob.
Less cost.
Significantly less cost. So the initial cost would be $59,000, which includes the annual fee of $33,000 that first year. So the initial cost is $26,000 more than the annual fee that we would have for the next 10 years with a 3% increase on it. And so staff recommends, this is an unbudgeted item and definitely will impact the rate study. I've already made the consultant aware of it as well. But
What's our current annual fee? Or
$5,000, $4,992. Yeah, that was a face I made.
Yeah,
I
shocking
agree.
was what I told them.
Maybe we can get a quote from ACES.
Yeah, it was,
ostensibly, they have a monopoly with the equipment that was purchased, and we really don't have a choice except short of changing out our entire meter system again at what cost $500,000 per the respective systems, electric.
no, it was total.
Oh, that was total,
500,
half a million.
total.
No, we're still paying for the original.
Yes, we are.
Where are we on that?
2023 is when we pay that off.
We paid off. How much
That was August of 23, I believe you said. at
That's
the
when the
finance?
COP loans are paid off, but through our meter charges, which is why those were instilled, we have about $107,000, I believe is what I said in the finance committee meeting. I keep track of the initial cost, and about $300,000 of the $500,000 that we spent to change over was the Golden State bill. $347,000 was the Golden State bill from the initial changeover.
So if we adopt this plan, what kind of a rate increase are the customers going to see on their monthly bill?
Don't know that yet.
Don't know.
No, because there's other... Water's upside down, as you well know,
Right.
And it's been upside down from the beginning of time, and we're going to try and fix that. But that's what the rate study is going to look at. It will, if we do decide to do this, this will be incorporated in the rate study as well.
The $26,000 of additional cost per year is spread out over several enterprises, right?
Yes.
That is correct. 4 enterprises.
4 enterprises.
Because sewer relies on water's reads for its allocation, so it has a proportional share.
It's a shock. It's too bad. On the other hand, it is a relatively small percentage of the cost. mean,
And
it's,
in relation, currently for our accounting software, we pay about $16,000 a year for their hosting and
this has
software.
nothing to do with the meters. This is only the piece of software that collects the data from the meters.
Absolutely correct.
Correct.
The only way that I will be able to read those meters is if we
Right.
pay this.
No, unless we go back to manual.
Right, exactly.
Correct.
So we discussed this at the Finance Committee and weren't too happy with it all, obviously, but recommend going with staff's recommendation of option 2. I think one issue is we really don't have a lot of, we discussed, can we run without, with unsupported software? And, staff's recommendation was, well, my position is billing is mission critical, and staff just wasn't comfortable with that. The other thing is that this is a software as a service or hosted implementation, and our current licensed software runs on our equipment, which is
correct
due to fail.
The servers that collect the data are in our mezzanine, and they are. It's one of Steve King's big things was these servers are going to.
This 33,000 isn't running on a computer in our facility.
No, it's cloud-based.
So when Volcano brings the internet down, we can no longer see what's happening with any of our meters.
That is correct, but
Same thing for accounting. I mean, our accounting software is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but okay.
But the one aspect is we've discussed in IT committee is when we lose those hours, we don't get those back when we're not reading. This cloud-based, theoretically, we even if they're not there when they look at them, they will repopulate backwards, which is
We'll
one
be able to get
one
both.
component.
Yeah, no,
one component.
I understand that, but if
If the
there's
internet
a
goes down,
situation in a residence and we want to know the current state of the meters.
if the internet goes down, then that would be down. And
But we
I don't know what
could go out
predates.
to
I don't
the
know what predates
residents,
me, but
you know.
in the 2.5 years I've been here, the internet's gone down twice, and one for a full work day and one for 2 hours.
And we do have the ability, obviously, if it was,
Yeah,
we
right.
could go to the residents and
Right.
check it out.
The other aspect of this we do not know, but we will explore depending on the decision today, is we'll need to get with Bob and Corey to see what the implementation of this new cloud base and how it gets pulled into report server, and that will require some additional time as well.
Which they'll charge us by the hour for.
What's that? Which they'll charge us, of course.
Census.
Yeah.
Or are they including the current service in this dollar amount?
I haven't asked that question, Bob. I would assume, I don't think last time we got a bill by the hour for when you worked with them to get the reports the first time. I don't remember getting a bill for that, but
I don't know either.
yeah.
Is this something you're willing to do, Bob?
Well, if they're willing to produce exactly what
Yeah.
they currently do now, then there's nothing to
I
be
don't
done.
see why that would be an issue. Honestly,
I don't know. Every software upgrade, they always produce something in a new form, and it's like adding the commas that we get from Fleet Track when they change that one thing that sent everything haywire. I'm sure there's one of those in here, and there will be some costs
Yeah,
associated with it, but Bob and Corey are pretty quick on getting on those, and
That one,
but that is a cost we will need to do, and if we do decide to proceed with this, that'll be one of our next steps.
But one of the other changes from when we started this and now, there are some standard industry protocols for poking at meter, for pinging meters and finding information, and I would expect that would be in the new software. So there might be a better way of dealing with things.
Let me ask you this. If we were to make a decision, defer this decision until January, just so that Bob and the Communications IT Committee could give it a little thought, would we be putting ourselves at risk at this point? In other words, when does the support drop? I mean, would they support it through January, for example?
Our contract's through to the 4992 is a calendar year contract.
Drew, I don't know if you remember whether, I don't know if it's currently being supported.
It's not.
Yeah, it's currently not, we're.
It'd be
it's-
status quo. I
Yeah,
guess,
it would be exactly.
to answer your question. So,
No, I would recommend we proceed. There's just,
horrible.
I feel
Yeah.
being violated in this crisis.
Tell me about it.
The Finance Committee had exactly the same reaction.
What? The option 2, there's no reason for option 1.
We did ask at Finance about the nature of census and so on, and we're told that they are sort of, one of 2 companies in California.
there's only 2
This is like,
And
sort
I
of like
wasn't-
our solid waste thing, it's ACES or South Tahoe, and you don't
Right.
like it.
I was also directed to ask Golden State if we could pay monthly for our annual fees rather than, one fell swoop. But I have not had the chance to ask them about that yet, but I will.
And the other thing I did relay at Finance as well, when I was at Aqua last week, this had come up, and so I talked to a lot of other general managers and operational managers and actually some accounting managers about the new software, and they were quite pleased with it as a significant upgrade over the prior portal, the way data is represented. So there may be some benefit.
I was definitely impressed with it when they
Can't be any worse.
presented it. It's definitely way more user friendly, and a lot more. There's a lot more bells and whistles for how we can take care of meters. We could actually shut off a water meter if we can buy water meters that you can turn them off from your computer. Like, I thought that was pretty cool, rather than having to dig up a water meter.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Which goes to our irrigation meter discussion.
But I assume it's already integrated with BCS. So when you want to get the meter
Yeah,
reads-
it's be the same kind of report that we would pull from PCS, or pull from
census
to PCS.
PCS.
All right, so that doesn't change for you.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. So, how often do you actually have to get support from them in the past, in a year, in a given year? I mean,
And this last year, a lot.
a lot. So
Yes.
there's a lot of troubleshooting.
Oh, yes.
So you're basically not sustainable without their support.
No.
Yeah.
And just a side note, Golden State, their main business is with water meters. They are doing us a favor by helping us with electric and propane meters. So generally we bypass Golden State and go straight to Census for electric and propane meter support. But we can get water meter support from Golden State to actually have a person come up and help us. But we had been foregoing that even with water meters recently because of how I felt about Golden State's original selling of us of an outdated product. I was not happy about it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this? Questions from the audience? If not, then I guess we're looking for a motion to proceed with this software upgrade, the second option, the lower cost option.
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
Standish moves.
I'll second it.
Rob seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Swallow hard and say aye. Okay, item G is renewable energy and carbon offsets. Jessica.
All right. So just an update now that the program has closed and we've got all the numbers in. And so just for the benefit of just a reminder for everybody, the Renewable Energy and Carbon Offset Program was available from October 21st through November 18th. And this gave customers the opportunity to purchase RECs and or carbon offsets for the 12-month period from October 2018 through November 2019. There were a total of 37 purchases. 28 were for both RECs and offsets, and 9 were for RECs only. This was a bit less than what we expected. After a survey was sent out in August to gauge customer interest, we received 105 responses. 62 of those respondents indicated they were interested in buying RECs, and 38 people were interested in buying propane offsets. So it's quite a bit. more than what the actual numbers were. So to help increase participation next year, there's currently an option on KMPUD.com for customers to be reminded for next year. They can click a button and get put on a list, and then I'll send them an email reminding them when the program will start. We'll publish newsletters in the months leading up to it, newsletter articles in the months leading up to it, and do email blasts. And I'm open to suggestions also
Well, I
for.
think it should be included in the HOA. You know, when whether it's Eric or someone else sets to the HOAs in July.
idea.
It has to be done much sooner, because I don't want to interrupt.
Much sooner than
Much sooner than July.
Oh, I mean, we've got to start, but
Yeah.
July is still just another time to remind, right?
Yeah, I think all the reminders we can get out there will be good.
I also thought that it would be helpful to put something in those paper bills. We still have a lot of customers that are not registered on the website and especially now that we're not putting a paper newsletter in those, customers that only get a paper bill. We need to put something, even if it's just in the notes section on the printed bill where I can put messages, something like that to remind people.
Clearly, the people that don't receive email were not aware of the system. And actually, I got feedback from several people that basically didn't, because I was mentioning the fact that there was actually more people that said they would do it, and actually when it would come to do it, there was less people. And many people told me, well, I was not aware. So you have to realize that people get mailbox full of things, so it's possible to skim it. So just communication. I think improving communication, we need to start right away. That's part of our program here. And yes, mail is another thing we should do as well. I agree. It'll be better next year, I think.
Or did you?
Yeah, I just have a question. I thought the whole thing was a little confusing, frankly. It was unclear to me. I mean, I liked the idea, but it just was unclear. It looked like it was based on what you did last year.
It's a true-up model.
Pardon?
It's a true-up model. You true-up for what you did the previous year.
See?
Right.
So does that actually change then what the district is going to be buying going forward? Is that what it is?
No, but that's the way renewable accounting occurs. There's a true-up period, and during that true-up period, you sort of straighten everything out. So it is the standard practice. We asked people whether they'd rather buy in advance or true-up, and the majority of respondents went for a true-up period.
So how does that affect the buying of the district? I don't understand.
It doesn't. Well, we just buy the additional amount based on what people asked for. So we bought an additional unit. So it doesn't make the district buy less. We buy an additional amount on behalf of the customers.
If you want to offset your footprint, that's what you need to do. That's simple. If you want to be not contributing to climate change, you do that.
Sounds like that we need to do more detailed explanation, because if you were confused, you're probably not the only one.
Yeah.
I agree with that. May I ask the Communications Committee to tackle this?
Yes.
As one item. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
So just a couple points. One is that the survey was sent to people, not to accounts. So two people in one account could have both said, yes, they'll do it. So we didn't try to reconcile the difference between people and accounts. So that would, you wouldn't expect 100%, but
Right.
that might explain part of it.
Well, I also want to just point out that this all happened later in the year. I mean, this is a very quick rollout.
Yeah, it was presented in August, and then we got it going.
And so
by October.
to me, it was getting our feet wet, getting the process down, making sure it worked properly, getting things on the website. Thank you to Bob and Corey. And so now we can do a more thorough job as we go ahead,
Right.
starting early and continuing.
So a couple of points I'd like to make. One is your bill your monthly statement looks the same whether you participated or not, and I think that's a lost opportunity. I think there should be, for the people that participated, their statements should look different. There should be a reminder on that. One place to do that is the bottom of the statement shows a comparison last year versus this year. There could be a star on the previous year that says it was carbon-free or 100% renewable. So something should be done so every month the people who are participating are reminded that they're participating. The second thing is, since for some accounts you can't do this unless your HOA buys it and then redistributes the cost. So it would be useful, I think, to have, and I guess that's for propane. Some of the condos are not individually metered. So the winter would be a good time to get the HOA residents to ask the HOA to consider it in time for the following year's budget. And we could give them estimates of what it would cost. In other words, marketing now for the larger accounts, we had no participation for commercial accounts. I believe that was the case. So I think there's a certain amount of promotion that can happen well before the period when it's open.
Didn't Vail commit to a completely renewable energy program by
2030? I think carbon-free.
Pretty close, actually. It's not that far. It's in 2025. I think it's, and they have a zero footprint already in place. So, yeah, I think some pressure should be put there. It's not going to look good.
They don't have zero footprint here.
Yeah.
They don't have zero footprint here, do they? Do they have zero footprint here because they've offset it somewhere else? Or you don't know?
Well,
I mean, if they're
I have to read their commitment, but the way they say it is basically they are committed to have a zero footprint, zero energy, zero nothing. So they need to offset the consumption. Yes, they should.
That's what I said, but they don't have zero footprint now.
No, they don't. Yeah. So that's why there is a disconnect between the marketing of what they say and what they do, and that actually can put some pressure on them.
So I look for ways to reward people who are already participating in their monthly bill. Otherwise, it looks like I spent money and something must have happened, but I don't know what it is. So I think there's an opportunity there, and there's an opportunity to remind people that haven't participated that they are. So I'd like to have us think about some ongoing activities.
So the project that they're contributing to, is there any visual recordings of improvements that they've made up in? It's up near Lassen, isn't it?
There are, there's links in the email blast that I sent out, and you can get on and see the whole.
I mean, that might be a way to promote it.
Yeah, well, I guess it's in March, we'll actually get the certificate of participation.
So I'm going to report what
and that'll be an opportunity there.
Now, if you see something visually happening in California,
yeah,
I
agree.
I think that would maybe help promote it.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed, yeah. And that's why we chose the McLeod River project.
Right,
closest
McLeod, okay.
And closest to our environment that we have here. And
That's just for the carbon.
That's just
Correct.
for carbon
That's for the
offsets.
propane carbon offset.
The renewable energy credits, there's no tangible something to look at.
Okay, well, sort of assign this to the planning committee to follow up on. Jessica.
You said planning or
Excuse me,
communications?
So next year the program will start in October, so everyone can get ready for that, and we'll do all the promotion that we can leading up to it, and it'll be available for a 1-month period, and folks will be offsetting the 12-month period of October 2019 through September 2020.
Thank you, Jess. Now we go to item J, the wastewater treatment plant membrane report.
Just an update. We did budget for this last year because there was some concern about the longevity and life of the membranes. We did bring Koch Solutions out to look at it. They have indicated a 1 to 2 year continuing lifespan on the membranes. So with this report, staff would recommend updating the capital budget outlay in terms of time on the next capital budget when the board will adopt in June. In the meantime, as the board knows, we're pursuing a report of waste discharge to fix the mistakes of the past. I did share this report with them. They do have a membrane specialist who is looking at the wastewater treatment plant component of the RWD, and he will be reviewing potential membrane solutions for us in that RWD, so we don't have to go back a second time after we do this in 2020. So we are looking forward to anticipate what the capacity could be in the plant with today's technology. So we'll be approaching this from two different ways, which would also feeds into the rate study as well.
So the wastewater treatment plant, the study that we had done a year ago or so, what did that contemplate?
That did not look at membrane longevity. No.
Okay. So that's just an update, right? That's any questions, discussion?
Are there any questions? They talked about 1 to 2 years more lifetime, or are we assuming 1 or 2?
Well, there's a delay. You have to kind of plan ahead.
Right, and there's.
You want to do it in the summertime.
And they can only be stored for 3 months.
Yeah. So I just think going forward, it gives us a little more realistic idea of how we have to budget.
Okay.
So I think we were a little over-optimistic, but these membranes have performed better than any other membranes we've ever had.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, if they go for 2 years, that'll be a total of 8 years.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, but we were talking about originally 10 to 12 years. And
I see.
That's why I think it's important. It's an important point of reference, whatever decision we make going forward.
Okay.
Now, I think you had some comments in the operations committee that you wanted to get some independent verification, or because this is a salesman selling you membranes.
Correct. And what's going to happen is with this new RWD, they have a membrane specialist on staff that will be. Right. That's how I decided to solve it.
So if you take this report at face value, though, we're probably going to be replacing them either
next 2 fiscal years from now.
Not this summer, the following summer?
Correct.
I agree with that interpretation.
I think John was actually fairly pleased with the how we've been cleaning and maintaining some of the comments that I've heard. He was the
yeah, that was a good report. Okay, I think that finishes those item 9. So let's move on to item 10, General Manager's report.
We got 9K.
No. Oh, yeah, sorry. KVFD, use of dedicated funds. Rick.
Yeah. Well, briefly, this was discussed in both Operations and Finance Committee. Since 2017, the Summer Festival has been focusing on generating funds for fire department equipment and, of course, seasonal labor. As you are aware, we did receive a grant for the SCBAs, which is the target for the funds. And therefore, we do have a bit of a reserve in our reserve account of almost $105,000. So my request today is I'm asking to be able to produce a notice or RFP or notice inviting bids to purchase a 2-bottle air compressor. Kind of looks like this thing in the picture here, but not exactly. But basically, I want to be able to fill SCBA air bottles here at the station for training and for during emergency situations. The estimated cost is around $70,000 for the compressor unit, for the fill station, as well as the ancillary electrical and necessary venting. And that's it, unless there's any questions from the board.
Review what's done now, both just in ordinary times versus as well as when there was actually an emergency going on, a fire going on?
Yeah, our current practice, and thank you for bringing that up, is to, for me, to physically take 12, 15 bottles down to the Eastern Alpine County Station of Woodford's, which is about, I think it's in my report, like 35 miles away, 53 miles round trip, fill the bottles and bring them back up. During an emergency, I'm usually dealing with the emergency, so I'm asking others, and last time when we had an event, It was Alpine County Sheriff's Department actually shuttling bottles from the station back up here. So I want to eliminate that and again kind of keep it in-house.
It'd be tough if the pass were closed, huh?
Yes.
That's usually what happens when we have an emergency.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the past, that's what's happened with big fires in some meadows and the roads were closed.
What did you say the dollar amount was, Rick?
For the fill station itself, I have an estimate of around $44,000. But again, there's extra equipment involved. My hope is to keep it under $70,000. I believe I can. There was another consideration of buying a unit that was a mobile unit. The costs were significantly more, probably be around $120,000.
Yep.
And then the issues of storage, and so I thought the 2-bottle compressor that's fixed in station would be the best option, and that's what I recommended.
And that's that gets bid on, right? It goes out for
Correct.
Yes.
So both the operations and finance committees unanimously agree with this direction. And I guess my only comment is I think you should communicate it to the community, both in the newsletter as well as in the letters that you send out soliciting participation in funds for our next fundraiser. Because I think there's a fairly widespread sort of non-understanding of how much did we raise each year and what was it used for.
So, but this is a compressor to fill air canisters, right?
Correct.
So, why is it that the dive boats that I've been on have something much simpler?
It doesn't have the word fire attached to it.
Oh.
Yeah. Anytime you put fire to an item, it seems to increase the cost significantly. But there's also, you're capturing ambient air. You have to put it into a first stage bottling system, and then it gets pressurized to go to that 2215. So there is a bit of a process to it, and then there's annual maintenance and other things that are involved.
Are you suggesting that we could also purchase a dive boat?
I think for that price, you'd get the dive boat with a compressor.
Yes.
Dock it at cables or something?
But, compared to software, this looks cheap. and weighs more.
Sure.
No annual fee.
That's true.
I think it's a great use. I mean, it's exactly what I think we raised money for. So, I think it's a great use.
Yeah.
Any other comments,
It's really
suggestions?
expensive, but I agree with the comments. Yes,
Okay. Then do I have a motion to use
Yeah,
the funds?
Follow Rick Ansell's recommendation and put this out to bid.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now we're done with item 9.
Yes, sir.
No more shuffling of these things like that. No, okay, come on.
It was. You can't help when your kid gets sick. So I know Brandy appreciates that.
Yeah. Okay, item 10, General Manager's Report.
Yeah, 10 says 9, Jess. Oops. It's usually 9, that's true. So just a couple things to update the board on. As you know, on October 26th, one of the direct bury cables that services the Nordic Center and the Kirkwood Inn failed. It is Vail's line, not the district's line, but on October 29th, in an effort to assist Vail, we went out and located the run out of the 3 runs where the failure was, which is between the service station and the inn. So that was on the 29th. On October 29th, Vail's contractor finally mobilized on November 25th and began excavation. This is, as you can see, behind the inn, and the inn is at your back, looking up towards the old barn across that AmeriGas, is just to give you a point of reference. Unfortunately, they hit weather, as you can see, and you'll note my inspector in the and district staff in the background in the vest. They were digging right under that roof which was about to shed, and so our district engineer directed no one from district was to be near that until it shed or until they knocked it down, which they subsequently did, but it was a dangerous situation. But because of the snow and because of the delays on them getting a contractor out for nearly a month, they're still working on the project. And on the December 9th, Vail opted to cease efforts to build this to the district standards and instead keep it as a private line. I would say they were about 90% complete when they made that decision, but it's their line, so they have that choice. And so the district ceased all inspections relative to the trench and the conduit. They will be supposedly pulling cable on Monday and terminating. We will inspect that because we do own the transformers, just not the line. We will be observing them landing of those lines. They will have to perform a continuity test from the old motel, all the way to the inn. So they have two lines to do. One's an existing line they have to do a test on, and one's the new line they just installed. Assuming that goes well, then we could be ready to re-energize by Tuesday. Given the weather, I don't know that they're out there working right now, so I don't know if that schedule still holds. But again, the district is no longer involved in it.
What was left to be done that would be not to...
At the time that it was terminated, there was 45 feet of trench left to be slurried. They would have had to remove a foot of native material they put in without compaction testing, which we require. And we offered them the option to peel that back, and they were installing slurry everywhere else, and they had more trucks than they needed, so they had extra slurry already. We offered them the opportunity, instead of waiting for a compaction test and reworking it, that they could peel that material back and slurry to the top of the sand. We were confident that the sand was compacted adequately. They opted not to do that.
Okay. Do we wish they had done it so that we could take ownership if...
The district was willing to take ownership if it was built to our standards. The district takes no position on which way they should have done it.
Okay.
But now El Dorado County inspection is involved, not us, and so when they can get their inspector out, their building inspector out for a private electric line, I don't know.
Okay.
The hope was today, but again, I don't know about that.
Right.
If it actually occurred or not.
Okay.
A couple other things on the list there. Just update, unless Stanish is going to update on playground. I could just do it quick, or you can do it.
You do it.
The playground committee is quite active. A lot of emails going around. A draft survey has gone around. I know Bertrand and I got comments back. There was a disconnect. Completely my fault. I always type BE when I'm sending an email to Bob Epstein, because that's how he comes up in KMPUD. It's B Epstein. Unfortunately, Bertrand is also BE, and somehow Bertrand got on the email course because his email is Bertrand. And anyway, I sent an email out to the committee. Bob didn't get on the original email. Bertrand did, and Standish did. So now all these emails have been going back and forth with Bertrand. There's been no Brown Act violation yet, but it may be a consideration of the president to gauge interest if Bob wants to step off and let Bertrand take it, or if we want to make the switch back, and that would be a consideration for you to make. So maybe a question to my two BEs: are you fine with switching, or do we want to switch back to the original appointed committee?
I would like to switch back to the original appointed committee.
Bob's, it was a very interested party initially, and
I was surprised. When I got on that, I said, okay.
But I appreciate your comments. They're very good. So if that's okay, then I will make the correction, because now you will be BP, no longer BE, because you have your KMPUD email address.
So now that I have this official email, it won't happen again, because you are BE and I'm BP.
Correct.
I got the same problem with Eric with a K and Eric with a K.
I just type in ER for you. It's easy. It just pops right up. Wastewater treatment plant. We do have. We did receive an interesting proposal or testing of the waters from Loomis and Associates, who we use for the surveying. They also have a civil engineering branch, and Michelle Gamble's over there now. She indicated that they believe, and this is again coming from a salesperson, that reached out to them. There may be an opportunity for a package plant for the wastewater treatment plant that is less than our total amount that we would do in rehab. I've asked her to make a presentation to the operations committee on that. So that will be coming back to operations shortly, and then we'll bring that back to the board.
It's a package plant. Is that a separate structure of some sort that
It
sits
would-
someplace
Correct.
outside the existing plant?
Correct. The thought my original thought had always been just demolish the old A-frame, and that's your footprint there. We'd have to demolish the new EQ or the old EQ tanks, equalization tanks, regardless. So there is a footprint where this could work. And package plants don't take up a lot of space. I don't know if you ever saw the one, Howard, that's up in Red Bluff at the Indian Reservation. It's a really slick technology with a really small footprint. It's an SBR plant, but it's really small, and I always envisioned that as a package plant. Our study from the other consultants had a much higher price tag, but I'm willing to let Loomis go down this path of a proposal. If it looks viable, then we can talk about it. But they're saying $5 million. Stantec said $11 million. There's a huge disconnect there. So it's something we'll be bringing back to ops, and if it looks like it had legs, it'll come back to the board. But it's also something that we'll need to consider in the rate study as well. So we're working on that. Did get an interesting email back. Talked with Bob a little bit about it, but we've Alpine County, and Terry, can you help me with the actual name of this separate entity, quasi-governmental, the biomass that one of your fellow board members
It's not quasi, it has nothing to do with Alpine County.
Okay.
It is a private group.
It's an NGO then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a group out there that wants to look at fuel reduction, and as part of that, they are looking at who could use it in Alpine County, and there was one or two candidates. We were one of the two candidates that had a possible use, and there's some funding. This costs the district nothing, and then there's the next step would be preliminary design study, and there's some funding grants available for that. So we're going to be meeting with them to talk about it, and we'll be bringing that back to operations as well.
So what is it?
It's a possible biomass plant facility that would provide, superheated water throughout select portions of the valley to offset propane use. It's all, and it was Forest Service. They're mainly looking at Forest Service reduction. That's where the funding came from. So it might have legs, it might not. They're saying it's going to save us $500,000 per year, not including O&M. But we'll do the due diligence, and I'll share the initial proposal with the board that I just received, and so you can look at it. But Bob and I are going to run it to ground a little bit too, since he did some work on it on the front end. And so just wanted to bring you up to speed on that was going on. And then the last thing I had was Alpine County had not a first reading, but an initial discussion about an excise tax on lift tickets in Alpine County. And so we'll be tracking that, and I would recommend that planning follow up on that and track where that's going.
So we will be discussing this with the two ski areas. It wasn't brought up by me. It was just they're looking at other options for dollars coming into the county.
I've suggested that this.
That planning committee track that one. It's a kind of a government relation kind of a thing, and in particular because it might ultimately have to affect our ability to do other things we want to do financially. Yet another burden on people in Kirkwood.
So is there documentation?
There is. There was the initial report that I will share with the planning committee, and then I can send it to you earlier. Jess, you have the packet from Nicole. I'll make sure she sends that out to you and Peter. Correct? Peter's on planning now.
That's right.
Okay, so just if you put a note to yourself on that, Jess, to send that out.
Eric, I might have missed it, but what is the update on are you finished or not?
I am.
Yeah.
But
I thought you were. What is the update on the playground committee, other than there was an email problem?
So they sent out an initial draft survey to the committee to review what they're going to send out to the public. And like I said, I think the only comments that Cheryl's received were mine and Bertrand's so far.
And mine.
Oh, she did get yours. Okay, but so drafting the survey that's going to go out to the public. The next step is going to be get that survey out. The other follow-up is from my end, and I did have a meeting with Matt Jones and
9C.
Matt Jones and Ricky Newberry and Brian Bigley were all there, and I did mention to them the concern, and they were not adverse to a long-term lease that would mirror the longevity of the equipment we purchased, but the proof is in the pudding, just like showing up for an agenda item. So and that's the two lead items that we've worked on so far.
And the playground committee is Bob and Cheryl and Ann O'Grady and who else?
You.
I'm on it?
I think so. I think you're on it. Yes, I think, and that's part of the survey too, is soliciting other people that would be interested in being on the committee. So I imagine that committee could grow substantively, which I think would be a good thing.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding me to finish that thought.
We move on to the operations report. Rick?
I wish Brandy were here to take full credit for this because she and her staff were able to complete something that a contractor would not bid on. And we have a T1 line that has some kind of goo in it. A gel to displace the water that was typically a problem in years past. As you know, it's frozen and severed our T1 fiber optic line. This machine, this photographs is a picture of a I don't remember the exact name, but basically it's a platform, underbridge platform that we had to rent for a week and got the gel in just before the massive snow hit. But again, kudos to staff and for Brandy and her crew for getting that done.
And Brandy also ran down one of only 3 of these pieces of equipment this side of the Rockies. And also,
you rarely see those on the highway.
Yeah, we also, I want to give a huge thanks to District 10 Caltrans. Unfortunately, through an oversight, our annual maintenance permit had expired, and they were able to get this done for us in 4 days to get a permit for us. So we have our annual permit renewed, which included a full lane closure, which you can't really tell from this picture, but it included a full lane closure, which was a huge deal, especially on the week leading up to Thanksgiving. They finished a day ahead of schedule. They could have worked Wednesday, and they were done by Tuesday night. So, big.
This is Dave Waddle.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah.
Hats off to the staff.
Yeah, no
great
kidding.
job, but something that they
Yeah, it's
been
kind of a
trained to
party
do.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think I could pull something together.
I don't have estimated costs of the total repair, but we'll be working on that and bring that back so you can kind of show you where we ended up. The other project...
Do you think we could contract out our services now? And
I told Dave he's an expert. He might want to do that, but we learned a lot. Luckily, we only had 2 bridges to address, so I think we're done forever, I hope. The other project that was started and not completed was the propane valve change-out. As you know, district approved and hired a contractor to come in and switch the valves out so we could have level propane tanks. Unfortunately, due to weather and contractor issues, they pulled off the project, so we are currently going to go through this winter doing what we did last year, is to hand transfer the load between 2 tanks, which creates an issue for snow removal because we have to maintain, basically get to what you can see right there, those valves, on a weekly basis. So, but we feel that the work that was done to this point will get us through until next, probably May, I think it's May 31st is what we said as a deadline?
June 30th.
June 30th, for the contractor to come back and complete the project. But just want to give you an update where we are with our propane valving.
do we believe we can avoid that kind of tunnel that you had last year?
Yes.
Yes.
We will avoid that tunnel we had last year.
That was pretty sketchy.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah, we've moved some snow stakes, and we're able to actually bucket the snow out and blow it out more efficiently now on both sides.
And the fact that we are not stealing generally propane electric staff for snow removal, they are taking care of their own snow removal, which includes the powerhouse, which is being kept up as well too, behind the radiators.
Great.
Unless there's any other more questions about propane, as you know, we had a huge start to winter. Normally, we'd like to see 1 foot or 2 footer come in and let our new operators, we have 4 new operators, cut their teeth on how to drive a trackless machine and blow snow, hopefully not into buildings, cars, people's walkways, and et cetera. But this one came in really hard, really cold at first, really heavy and wet at the end. It created huge issues for snow removal staff. One, it created an ice layer on the snow that if you push a little bit of snow or try to blow a little bit of snow, it actually pushed the piles around. So we didn't lose any operators, new operators after this event, but we certainly learned a lot, and it took us several days to clean up, and also we had to give staff time to rest because there was, of course, the timing didn't work with our payroll calendar. We had a manager overtime in our staff, and so hats off to some of the salary staff that worked tremendous hours to get things done, and we're certainly going to continue to improve on our operations. And not only does that impact snow removal for the community, but it does impact our operations. All the equipment that was left out that we thought was safe, or we could move it tomorrow or next week, got buried. So propane valves, items around the treatment plant, as well as the powerhouse. It just creates a lot of work, but we felt like we got caught up this week with some clear weather, and we're right back at it.
How did our equipment do?
Right out of the gate, we lost 3 tracklesses and had an issue with the RPM blower, which was not associated with anything we did. It was the Holt of California. When we purchased the screens for the RPM, the big blower, which we typically don't put the big blower on until January, we pulled it out this weekend. But we had zip ties and things keeping the monitor on the windshield of the loader, which worked for about half a day. Then it fell off, and then we had to kind of re-rig it. In fact, we've got it to a point where we've got 2 permanent mounts, and as we were having this meeting today, Holt drove back into the valley to hopefully complete that task. But we scabbed it together, and so the second storm cycle came through. We were able to bring back 1 trackless, and then today I hope to have 5 tracklesses with 1 still beyond us. It's a software programming. It's on T6, our newest machine, and so Tom's been on the phone, our mechanic, on a daily basis trying to resolve that issue so we can have at least 6 machines going into as what we know is going to be a busy holiday break, especially if the weather lines up as NOAA's indicating.
Wow. Software.
And also, 3 of our blades are failing. 2 are new, and so those are warranty issues, and we're screaming at the vendor right now. And so
We're finding issues. The only way you can find them is if you move the snow, and that's what we're doing. Finally, just a word of caution. This is from 2 days ago. Clear, dry, sunny road. Don't know how this guy rolled his vehicle. Luckily, he was unharmed. But we did attend 2 Caltrans meetings in the last month with District 10, and also a conference call with him. So Caltrans has our attention. I think it's a direct effect from the letter that the district sent, as well as the resort, saying, we care. If you need our mechanics, we're welcome to share. You need our parts. If we can communicate things to keep the highway open, and or get the message out when they're going to open it, whether they're going to shuttle cars in or out. So it's been very, very good. And as you know, notice the reader boards. It says no gas at Kirkwood, as what Eric talked about before.
Yeah.
When have you ever seen a Caltrans sign reflect something that is a part of it?
Anyway, but I was impressed that I couldn't and knew about it.
Yeah. So again, I think we have Caltrans' attention, and hopefully we can keep that momentum forward, that motivation forward. momentum going, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
Any questions, Rick? Well, thank you, Rick.
Certainly.
Okay, we have the standing committee reports. I'll just start with planning. We did not meet. The planning committee is now scheduled to meet on
January.
the normal time on January, but I think that there should be a discussion with Bertrand and Peter about that.
Sure.
That's been normally, just so you know, it's been normally at 9 a.m. on the Friday before the board meeting, because the planning committee agenda normally doesn't include anything that's got to take action right away. It's a more longer range.
I just had one item for planning is we did get a preliminary report from MECTM on heat pumps, which was more encouraging than the first report.
Oh.
And so I think there will be a desire to follow up on that and try to figure out is there a next step that we could make work. And then it'd probably be a good idea for Bertrand to get a copy.
Yes.
So maybe you can take care of that. But it does look at 3 commercial buildings or operations and the feasibility of using a heat pump. And the results were can't be done. So we want to take a look at that. Between some combination of that, or if we can do a biomass to heat that doesn't cause air quality issues, which is what usually goes wrong with those, then those could be ways of mitigating the need for increasing the use of propane and maybe eventually being able to reduce the use of propane.
Great, okay. Thank you.
So that's one of your big projects to look at.
Finance?
We covered all the agenda items at this meeting. We covered it at our meeting.
Thank you. Operations?
I would say the same thing. We didn't leave anything out, did we?
No.
What was IT?
No meetings since last
And personnel, there was no meetings that I know of.
I know.
Okay. Temporary advisory committee reports, is that the playground now? Or?
I just got an email from Cheryl, so if you want me to add
Sure.
that to what I said. So she's waiting for a final review from Ann after incorporating our comments that we mentioned, and a draft email she's also drafted an email to accompany the survey. She's going to send a preview once more to the committee. The goal is to send it out December 16th with requested responses by January 3rd, and they think they're going to make that. And they will now are turning their focus to launching the fundraiser over Martin Luther King weekend. Bit of a tall order, but they're going to do their best. Quick meeting of the group after the holidays is a good idea, and I'm assuming that she will make that happen, knowing Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Okay, let's see. Bob and I have met by phone regarding a contract renewal for Eric. Eric has drafted a proposed contract renewal, and we're going to be meeting with Eric on December 30th, weather permitting, us to get up here to have that conversation, and we hope to bring something to the board in January, at our January board meeting, for discussion. Okay, anything else that I'm missing on that? If not, then we go to general discussion. There's opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, et cetera. Do the board members have anything that they'd like to bring up?
Bertrand, welcome to the board. I'm looking at KMA's recently refurbished website, and it says you're a board member of KMA. Are you a board member of KMA?
No, I did resign earlier this month, so before the 6th, I know for a fact.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can maybe can help you if you have a specific question.
My questions are around, the stuff that we have to take every year, which is ethics, laws, and principles. And when I joined the board 8 years ago, along with Bob Endy, he was either on the East Meadows board or one of the committees.
He was the president.
And he had to resign because at the time we were advised that it was a conflict of interest for a PUD board member to be a board member of a major customer.
I can give you a specific example because Bob didn't understand why he had to. He said, I can do them both. I said, Bob, it's a conflict. Sooner or later you're going to run into a conflict. literally 1 month later, an irrigation valve in a common area of East Meadows broke, and there was a lot of water lost. Well, Mr. PUD member, Mr. President of the East Meadows Board, how are you going to handle this? You can't.
Resign.
So he resigned from the East Meadows Board right away after that. And it's just, it obviously is a good practice not to be on both sides of a conversation.
So the other question, though, is the website says that you're the road committee chairperson. And does that mean that you're in charge of the KMA committee that negotiates for snow removal from its roads, which is currently provided by a public agency of which you're a board member?
No, actually, I'm not a snow removal guy. I am in charge of dealing with Qualcomm, basically. That's what I'm doing here. So I'm the guy.
Okay, so you're not the snow removal guy.
I'm not the snow removal point man, yes.
Who is that now?
I don't know. It's probably going to be defined tomorrow at the KMA meeting. I don't know that.
Well, I guess my concern, of course, is this ethics laws and principles, which you're going to learn about, I'm sure, shortly. And I think best practice is to get off of all leadership positions of a HOA that's a major customer.
Okay. I mean, as I said, I stepped down from the board of KMA, step one. I'm not, my role on the road committee is specifically targeting the paving, so I'm just only dealing with Qualcomm. So the only conflict would be time-wise, basically trying to get Qualcomm to cater KMA needs versus KMPUD needs. That would be one. But other than that, I don't have any leadership. I mean, as I say, I just stepped down, I believe, the 5th of December.
Okay, it'd be great to get the website updated because
I'm not responsible of the website, but I will ask for that to be corrected, yes.
Just one point of clarification to tag on, if I could, Standish, because
sure,
when
and on the website before you do.
Sure.
I mean, what I've experienced in this environment is it's important to do the right thing, but also to be seen to be doing the right thing. And if there's a website that says you're a board member and you're not, that's...
As I say, I just stepped down and I don't have control on what's on the website, and
Sure.
they are going to fix it anytime soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Just my only concern would be, because we had to coordinate with you on paving for relative to our valves and manholes, so who do we coordinate now? Will that still be you? Because that definitely goes to, I think, Standish's concern.
We are looking for someone else to take care of our road. That's what, and the sooner we find it, I step out. And we should not have any activity before spring. So I think this is just a transition time.
I have one item I'd like, possibly for, I wonder if we could invite Bruce Gianola to a board meeting, the January board meeting ideally, because I think Bruce has taken somewhat of a leadership position on the economic development effort. And to be honest, I'm really not clear what's going on. I attended one meeting to represent the board, but that was all. I know things are happening. I'm not sure what it is, and I think that it might affect who we ask to be representing us.
It was Jeff, so
it was Jeff.
Definitely need to fill that void because Jeff was doing all that for the district.
Right. So, but is Bruce? Am I right? Did
Bruce
sort of
is
take a
leading the
leadership
charge,
position?
absolutely.
Could we invite him to come and just
I
have
will
a
see if he's available.
short
for our next
presentation
meeting.
on where things stand? I know that they've developed some subcommittees or core committees or things like that, but I'm sort of in the dark about it, and I think it's an important effort. I think we need to be represented, but we need to understand where things are. Anything else?
My last one is there an email address you use for Box? Because we have all these documents in Box, which I set up 6 years ago, and Jeff Smith was on there, but I just took him off. Would you like to be on the Box distribution list?
Yes, please. Actually, I mean, for the...
He has a KMPUD
I would
address
use
now.
the official email I just got, which is bperoud, BPERROUD, at KMPUD.com.
Thank you.
So I got access to the Office 365 environment. Yeah. It's a bit quiet.
Yes.
I was surprised that it was a bit empty. Yeah.
Office 365 what?
Well, nobody uses that. But
That's just how we set up an email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the emails are set
Sure.
up. with Office
Yeah.
365.
Yeah.
It is far away from
So
that.
now I understand if there is a bug.
we don't use it for actual work.
Yeah, exactly.
Just for the email.
But I see something from 2014 and say, okay.
No, there's
well,
nothing.
I would say the one qualification is I would use the district's calendar, because if he sets up a meeting with you, he sends the invite to your PUD address. If you don't have the calendar up, you don't see the meeting.
Yes.
But not their address book or anything
The
else.
Google Calendar, I'll forward it.
Yeah.
The only other thing we had was, since we approved 9I, we are going to have a special meeting on February 1st, so I would recommend that we cancel our regular meeting February 8th and have our meeting February 1st just to cover everything. Precludes us meeting week back to back on 2 consecutive weeks.
Okay, and I won't be here on either day.
Okay.
Either the first or the 8th.
And I won't be here on the
India.
1st.
Kelly.
Just one thing, also, we will be having to, update the signature cards with Bank of the West, since Jeff is now no longer on the board. So that is one thing that.
We'll do it January's meeting.
Okay, well, we have 2 people who cannot attend on February 1st, 1 who cannot attend on February 8th. I guess an option is to have just an emergency meeting for February 1st.
We could have the public hearing for February 1st.
Oh, it would have to be right.
It's the public hearing. We've noticed it. I mean, can you dial in, Standish?
Yes.
And I know Bob is in India, so he won't be able to dial in. Or if he could, it'd be a great inconvenience, so we're not going to ask
I
that.
have no idea what I can do.
So I think February 1st is the ideal.
Well, it seems like we don't have much choice if we want to get this.
Just because it's a public hearing and we approved it under 9I as the public hearing, we do have to have it then. We can't have that portion on the 8th. So
Right.
we could physically have it, another meeting on the 8th, but there'd be, I'm just loath to waste your time and staff's time 2 consecutive weekends.
Well,
Waste.
um,
You could be out skiing, Standish.
Yeah.
we need the meeting on the 1st. And you're suggesting we have the full meeting then.
Correct.
If Standish can call in,
Mm-hmm.
then Bob was going to be at the 8th anyway.
Right.
Excuse me, I want to
Right,
process
that's
all
right,
this.
yeah.
Bertrand, could you attend on the 1st?
All
February.
February. Yes.
Instead of the 8th, the board meeting would be on the 1st.
It's too far for me to schedule, so yes.
Peter?
I never go anywhere.
Yes, you do.
Peter.
You go to Hawaii every now and then, I know that.
I'll be here.
Okay, well, I will cause myself to be here. I may be disappointing a granddaughter, but
Is that going to be a full meeting?
she doesn't
or-
talk to me
It would
anymore
be a
anyway.
full
She's a
meeting.
teenager.
But we could do the public hearing first, and then if you needed to bow off, we'd still have a quorum for the balance of the meeting.
Okay.
So if that,
I'll be skiing in Utah, so I'd like to get it over with.
okay. So we'll schedule the public hearing for the first thing, and
Snow's
then
not good enough here?
then follow with the regular meeting right after. But the public hearing will be
Just
scheduled
change it to
for
the
the 8 o'clock.
The first wave that came in Thanksgiving was
Oh,
so
yeah,
cold.
it was powder.
And then Monday when they, sorry.
Okay,
I
so
will apologize to
we
me.
will cancel the regular meeting on February 8th, and we will hold a special meeting on February 1st. And it'll be the same time,
And that's a Saturday.
8 a.m.
Yes.
Saturday, right?
Saturday, February 1st. Okay. And, okay. please order snow not to be falling on either Thursday or Friday that
Yes.
preceding, okay?
I will do my best.
Okay. Okay, we will now retire to a closed session. We will be coming back into open session following the closed session. This is for a closed session regarding fringe benefits in accordance with Government Code, paragraph 54957.6. Standish, do you have your car? Are you driving? Can I get you to drive back these minutes? Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Where was that sit left, Jess?
Maybe
In the back row?
In the second back row, it was sitting right near where.
Eric, that's not Sandy's?
No, is it blue on the back?
Yes, it's blue on the back. No.
I don't know. It's not hers.
If
No,
you power
no,
it
it's
on,
not.
is there a name?
There is a screen, but there is no name. No,
The guy from Masons was in the back.
I'll give him a call.
Must be a teenager, someone who could tell us.
It could have been Rick, except back there for a while.
I can review the tape too.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Okay, we're reopening the open session. The topic of conversation is holiday bonus for staff, and in our discussion in closed session, we agreed to propose for action authorizing the general manager to provide bonuses equal to 1% of salary. The seasonal employees, $100 of bonus, except for the returning seasonal at $200. So I will entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, and now this meeting is closed. Thank you.
They haven't closed the spur yet.